Hi, welcome to Module 1. Actually, Module 1 is pretty much a crash course of NET125. So 1, I am not going to lecture over all of NET125, but I at least want to highlight some things that you want to refresh your memory. And you can use the NetCAD site. Packet Tracer Lab should help a little bit. But the NetCAD site, I think, has, because one, it's got the text, and two, it's got the simulations there. I'm only going to give you 2 Packet Tracer Labs for this chapter. So I'm just going to quickly go through things that you want to make sure you jog your memory with. And first is understanding how a switch, because basically we're going to look at switch configuration and router configuration, basically, and then how to connect, how to verify connectivity. So first thing, you've got to understand the basic configurations of a switch, some of its initial setting. So that's the first thing. You got to double check, remember how to check for the boot sequence, how to verify the boot system command, double checking the different file systems that are currently on a switch. Understanding what the LEDs are telling you on a switch. Yes, they are telling you something, so take a look at what they are. Now, also, if you're trying to recover from a crash, what can you do? So we've done a lab on this in the past, so just take a look at this just to refresh your memory. Also, look at how do I get access to a switch via a console cable connecting to your switch, how to set up a VLAN. All of those things are things that we discussed in the past. There's a couple of examples on how to do that configuration, and you want to make sure you follow through on that. We did it both for an IPv4 and IPv6. And I think I gave you the lab to dust off some cobwebs. Now, one thing you got to worry about is the things that are potential issues that you got to worry about in setting up switches. Is you got to make sure that the duplex is the same. I don't care if it's simplex or duplex, but you need to make sure that, how does that handle? So you got to understand duplex communication. Full duplex one way, half duplex or simplex is one way conversation. These two, if you got a switch set up to do one or the other, they will not set up. They will not work. You also remember how to configure the physical ports. Configuration command, how to set configuration, the speed, how to save information from your running configuration to your startup configuration. Realizing that most newer switches automatically do this for you. So you don't even have to worry about straight through crossover cables because you have like devices. In theory, normally in older switches you would need to make sure you had a crossover cable so you weren't going to have collisions on the wire. But when auto MDIX is enabled, the interface automatically detects what type of cable is connected. So it makes life a lot easier. But if you're working with older systems, this may not be an option for you. And then, of course, there are some very plethora of switch configuration commands. Show interfaces, the configuration, both the startup and the running. All of those things are available to you that you need to make sure are there and you understand it. How to verify, show running configuration, show interfaces, show what interfaces, what on a specific interface, what's up, what is the protocols up and up to make sure that all 3 layers are working. Of course, you can do the brief version or you can do the full version of the interface commands, and it tells you how much data and type of data has been gone through that system, different types of errors. Keep in mind the different types of input and output files. What size are they? What kind of frames are they? How big are they? How do I troubleshoot a network layer? So all of this stuff should have been stuff that you've done in NET125. So I'm going to let you go through again. I highly recommend the syntax checkers to help you configure the practice before you get into a lab setup. So use the simulators, the syntax checkers to verify that. Next thing you want to worry about is, how do I get remote access? How do I get access to a device? Well, there's two different options. There's Telnet and there's SSH. We recommend SSH because it's secure. Telnet is not secure, but just know that both are the same. They're not the same from the standpoint, from a security standpoint, but they can make it and get you access. But we're going to make sure we focus on SSH because we're going to make sure you're developing a secure environment. Now, just keep in mind, this is, remember, you're going to play some Wireshark here, so you may want to make yourself familiar, dust off some cobwebs on Wireshark. Which way, how do I configure SSH? In this case, there are multiple steps. You got to verify if SSH exists. After that, you want to configure. You got to set up the IP domain. After the IP domain is set up, you've got to generate, the RSA key pairs, and that's done with the crypto key generate command. So I want you to go through this, username and password. Then you're going to set up, which lines am I going to allow SSH to set up, and then of course which version am I using. Of course the question is, how do I verify it? So you want to make sure you review this. Log in as an admin. You should be able to get, it'll tell you, is the keyboard interactive or not. I don't know if I gave you the lab on secure shell or not. Basic router configuration. We covered this in the last semester, so basic commands, I would highly recommend again the syntax checker to make sure you understand it. And then we talked a little bit about when we introduced IPv6, you had, how do I run IPv4 and IPv6 together? One of the ways you're using, probably most of the ways you're using, is called a dual stack, where I'm running both IPv4 and IPv6 at the same time. So just make sure you're familiar with that. How to configure the interfaces, how to set an IP address, how to make sure a port is active, an interface is active. Remember, a switch, you don't have to turn on or power up a particular interface. But a router, you had to turn the router on, but you also had to make sure that each port is activated, and that's done with the no shut command. That no shutdown command activates that. So take a look at that, and all these are practice stuff, and I'll come back, we'll make another video here in a minute on the rest of the chapter.